I took care of my sick wife for 4 years. Then I overheard her say I was just a backup plan. For the past 4 years, I put my life on hold to take care of my wife, Emma. She was diagnosed with a rare autoimmune condition right after we celebrated our 5th wedding anniversary. It wasn't terminal, but it made everyday life exhausting for her, constant fatigue, joint pain, and the occasional hospital visit. I cut back on work. I declined a huge promotion because it involved traveling, and Emma said she didn't want to be alone. I cooked her meals, drove her to appointments, handled all the housework, and even bathed her during flare-ups. I did it all without complaint. Because I loved her. I still do, or at least I thought I did. The turning point happened on a random Tuesday afternoon. I was in the garage fixing the dryer. Emma thought I had left to run errands. She was in the kitchen, chatting on speakerphone with her best friend, Chloe. Normally I'd never eavesdrop, but the way Chloe's voice carried through the wall made it impossible not to hear. Chloe laughed and asked, "So, be honest, do you still miss Sean?" Sean was Emma's ex-boyfriend. The one who got away, apparently. I froze. I remember the screwdriver slipping from my hand and clanging on the cement. But I didn't move. I just listened. Emma sighed. "Of course I miss him. I always will. But he's gone. And anyway, I married Daniel because he was safe. Stable. My backup plan." Chloe let out a gasp. "Oh my God." Emma laughed. "What?" "It's true. He's sweet, and he takes care of me. I don't love him the way I loved Sean, but honestly, after everything, it's just easier this way. He worships me. He'll never leave." My stomach dropped. I couldn't breathe. I'd built my world around this woman. I sacrificed promotions, friendships, time, health, all for someone who saw me as a backup. I left the tools on the ground and quietly walked out the side door. I sat in my car for over an hour, staring at the steering wheel. My mind was racing. Was I just a nursemaid to her? Some placeholder until she could feel again? That night, I slept in the guest room. She didn't ask why. When Lisa got sick, everything in our lives shifted. One moment we were planning our 10th anniversary trip to the Smoky Mountains, and the next, we were sitting in a sterile doctor's office, staring at MRI results and hearing the words autoimmune disorder. It was like someone hit pause on our lives and then switched to a completely different movie. The first few months were the hardest. Her energy drained like a leaky faucet, slow at first, then a flood. She went from hiking every weekend to struggling to get out of bed. I remember waking up at 3 a.m. once to find her sitting on the floor of the bathroom, crying because she couldn't even lift herself up to reach the sink. I picked her up and held her like she weighed nothing. I whispered that I had her, that it was okay, even though inside, I was completely terrified. I took time off work, burned through my PTO, then went part-time. Eventually, I quit. My job at the hardware store didn't pay much, but it was steady. Still, Lisa needed me more. I became her nurse, her chauffeur, her cook, her therapist. I managed her medications, tracked her symptoms, bathed her, dressed her, cleaned the vomit off the floor more times than I can count. Some nights, I slept on the floor beside her bed because her breathing sounded wrong, and I was scared she wouldn't wake up in the morning. Friends stopped coming around. Her family visited for the first few months but then slowly faded into phone calls that became fewer and fewer. Eventually, it was just me. And her. I told myself that's what love was. Not the wedding photos or romantic vacations, but the ugly parts. The real parts. The kind of stuff that never makes it to Instagram. She always said she was grateful. She'd look at me with those tired eyes and say, "I don't know what I'd do without you." And I believed her. That's what made what I overheard even worse. Because for 4 years, I sacrificed everything, my career, my social life, my health, for a woman who apparently didn't see me as her husband anymore. She saw me as a backup plan. It happened on a Tuesday. Lisa had started to feel a little better lately. Her symptoms weren't as severe, and she was finally able to spend a few hours upright without total exhaustion. I'd even started thinking about maybe picking up part-time work again. Just something flexible, deliveries, maybe. Enough to help with bills. That morning, her friend Kelsey came over. They hadn't seen each other in months. I made coffee, sat out some snacks, then headed out to run errands so they could have some privacy. I figured they'd want to talk about everything, and Lisa deserved to feel normal again, not have her nurse hovering. But I forgot my wallet. I'd only been gone 10 minutes when I came back. Quietly. I didn't mean to listen. I wasn't trying to sneak around. But I heard my name, and I paused. I stood in the hallway, just outside the living room, frozen. Kelsey's voice, I still can't believe he stayed. Most guys would have been gone year one. Lisa, I know. Honestly, I didn't think he would either. Kelsey laughed. You're lucky. I mean, he's not really doing anything else now, right? Lisa sighed. Yeah. It's like, he's here. He's dependable. And he's safe. But you know, I never thought I'd end up with him long term. He was always kind of, the fallback guy. The fallback guy. I felt like the ground fell out from under me. Lisa went on, chuckling lightly, don't get me wrong. I appreciate everything he's done. I do. But it's not like there's passion anymore. It's just, survival. And if things ever get back to normal, I don't know if I'll want to keep pretending. Pretending. I couldn't breathe. I stood there, paralyzed, listening to the woman I gave up my entire life for talk about me like I was just a stand-in. A temporary fix until she found someone better. Someone she actually wanted. When I finally walked into the room, neither of them noticed the color had drained from my face. I dropped my wallet on the counter, smiled politely, and said, forgot this. Then I walked out the door without looking back. In the car, I sat gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles went white. The engine idled. I didn't start driving for nearly 10 minutes. Because in that moment, I realized something that hurt more than anything else she'd said. Lisa didn't love me. She loved that I made her life easier. I didn't go home that night. Instead, I drove around for hours, aimless, hollow, and numb. The same questions kept looping in my mind. Was it always like this? Was I always just a placeholder? The more I thought about it, the more it started to make sense. There had been signs. Subtle things. Ways she'd pull away when people asked how we met. Jokes she'd make about how life had other plans. But I never wanted to believe any of it meant something deeper. When I first met Lisa, she was electric. She had this wildness in her eyes, like she wanted to escape the world and burn it down on the way out. I was the opposite, calm, reliable, a little boring, maybe. I wasn't flashy or rich or spontaneous. But I was there. Always. And when she got sick, I was still there. Through the hospital stays, the medications, the side effects, the tears, the days she couldn't stand on her own, the nights she screamed in pain, I never left. Not once. I turned down a promotion because it required travel. I missed my sister's wedding because Lisa had a bad flare-up. I stopped playing in my weekend soccer league. I cut back on seeing friends. Slowly, my world shrank until she became the only thing in it. And apparently, to her, I was never more than a temporary shelter from the storm. At around midnight, I parked in an empty lot by the lake. I sat on the hood of my car, watching the water ripple under the moonlight, trying to make sense of what I'd heard. Then my phone buzzed. A text from Lisa, "Hey, you okay? You've been gone all day." I stared at it for a long time before typing back, "I'm fine. Just needed air." She replied almost instantly, "Okay. Be safe. Love you." I didn't respond. The next morning, I went back home like nothing had happened. I made breakfast, checked on her meds, and smiled through it all. But something had changed in me. A wall had gone up. And behind it, I started to build a plan. A plan to get my life back. The days after I overheard Lisa's cruel words slipped by in a strange haze. I stuck to my routine like nothing had happened, waking up early, cooking breakfast, helping her get dressed, making sure her meds were lined up and taken. To her, I was still the devoted husband who never let her down. But something inside me had cracked. I didn't say anything, didn't confront her. Instead, I watched. Closely. I started noticing the little things. The way she smiled, polite and empty, when I surprised her with her favorite tea. How she avoided eye contact when I sat beside her. How her hand no longer instinctively reached for mine when I guided her into bed. Something was missing. Maybe it always had been, and I'd just been too blinded by duty or love, or both, to see it. One night, when she had drifted into her usual deep sleep on the couch, I walked into the bedroom and opened the drawer where she kept her old journals. I hesitated, it felt wrong. But I needed to understand. I needed to know how we got here, to a place where the woman I had sacrificed everything for could hope I'd crash and die. Most of the entries were from years ago, before her illness, before the surgeries, before our lives were swallowed by doctors' appointments and prescriptions. The early pages were sweet. She wrote about our dates, the way I made her laugh, how steady I was compared to the chaos she'd grown up in. I smiled reading those. But as I kept flipping through, I saw something change. Around year 3 of our marriage, her words shifted. Her tone became colder. Detached. There were pages where she described feeling trapped. Like life was moving too fast. Like she wasn't sure who she was anymore. And then I saw a name that hit like a fist to the chest. Chris. I knew the name. Her college boyfriend. The one she always described as a lesson, not a partner. I never thought much of it. One entry read. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I waited for Chris. Would he have been more passionate? Would life have felt more like living and less like surviving? My stomach dropped. Another passage, written just months after her diagnosis, cut even deeper. I don't know if I love James or if I'm just scared to be alone in this. He's been good to me. Too good, maybe. But I feel empty. Like I'm living someone else's life. I hate that I think these things. But I do. That line haunted me. I don't know if I love him or if I'm just scared to be alone in this. For 4 years, I cleaned up her vomit, held her hand through chemo, sat through sleepless nights beside a hospital bed, all while she quietly questioned if I was just her fallback plan. And here I was, reading it in her own handwriting. I closed the journal, my hands trembling. I wasn't angry anymore. Not really. I was heartbroken. And more than anything, I was tired. Tired of pretending everything was okay. Tired of giving all of myself to someone who saw me as convenient. Maybe it was time she saw what life looked like without me. I didn't leave immediately. That would have been too easy, and too cruel. As angry and broken as I felt, I still cared about Lisa's well-being. I wasn't the type of person to disappear and let her fall apart without warning. But I couldn't stay. Not after what I read, not after everything I'd heard. I needed her to sit with the silence I had carried alone for years. So I started planning. It was the quiet kind of planning, the kind that happens while you're folding laundry, smiling across the table, making her favorite soup. The kind that grows in the spaces between conversations, when your heart whispers truths your mind tries to ignore. I began moving my things, piece by piece, to a storage unit I rented under a fake name. Clothes. My books. The framed photos of my parents that she never really liked hanging up anyway. I left only the essentials, enough to make it look like I was still there. Still hers. During the day, I made excuses to run errands and visited an old friend I hadn't seen in years, Mark, who now managed a lakeside cabin rental 3 hours out of town. He owed me a favor from our college days. I cashed it in. A week. No questions asked. The night before I left, I stayed up late writing. Not just a note, but a letter, the kind of letter that burns when you write it. I poured every truth onto the paper. I told her about the overheard conversation with her sister. About the journal. About the pain of being someone's safe choice instead of their only choice. I didn't yell. I didn't accuse. I didn't threaten. I just told the truth, calmly, clearly, fully. And at the end of the letter, I wrote, I loved you in a way that demanded nothing, expected nothing, and stayed even when it hurt. But I finally realized that loving you doesn't mean erasing myself. I hope someday, when you're ready to face who you really are, you'll understand why I left. The next morning, I made her breakfast like always, eggs, sourdough toast, chamomile tea with honey. I placed the letter on the kitchen counter beside her pill organizer, kissed her on the forehead while she slept, and walked out the door. I didn't look back. The drive to the lake was surreal. Empty highways. Overcast sky. A playlist she used to love played softly through the speakers. I laughed bitterly when a song came on that she once called our song. Now it just sounded like a memory dressed in someone else's clothes. When I arrived at the cabin, it felt like stepping into another life. Wood-paneled walls. A fireplace that crackled with warmth. No emails. No noise. No her. For the first time in what felt like forever, the silence wasn't heavy. It was peaceful. I turned off my phone. And I let myself exist. For 3 days, I just was. I hiked. I journaled. I slept. I sat by the lake and watched the way the water reflected the sky, still, deep, and full of things hidden beneath the surface. Kind of like me. On the 4th day, I turned the phone back on. 23 missed calls. 11 voicemails. Dozens of texts. At first, she was confused. Then angry. Then panicked. But it was one text that stood out most, sent at 3:12 a.m. I read your letter. I didn't know you were in so much pain. I thought you were okay. I'm sorry. Please come home. I can't do this alone. I stared at the screen for a long time. And then I powered the phone off again. I wasn't ready to reply. Maybe I never would be. The message she left broke me. But I didn't go back. A week passed at the lake. Each morning I woke up expecting the ache in my chest to be lighter. It wasn't. But it changed. It softened, shifted. It became something more bearable, like the dull throb after a wound has closed but still remembers the pain. I still thought about her. Constantly. Every habit reminded me of her, the way I brewed my coffee, the sound of her slippers in the hallway, the silence between dinner and sleep. But I didn't miss being with her. I missed the idea of her. On the 7th day, I checked my phone again. Only one new message. A voice memo. Lisa's voice was shaky. Quiet. Raw in a way I'd never heard before. I was wrong. I was so wrong. I thought being with someone dependable meant I'd always be safe. But I used that safety to hide from myself. I took your love for granted. And when I realized how deep it ran, it scared me. That's not an excuse. Just an ugly truth. She paused, and I heard her breath hitch. You deserved better. You still do. If you don't come back, I'll understand. But I needed you to know, I never meant to be cruel. I just didn't know how broken I was. Until you left. I played the message 3 times. Each time it hit me harder. Not because I wanted to go back. But because it proved something I'd always suspected, she could understand, if she was forced to sit with herself long enough. And now, she finally had. I didn't respond. Not right away. Not even that day. Instead, I sat by the lake and stared at my reflection, realizing that I was finally seeing me, not as someone's husband, someone's support system, someone's backup plan, but as a whole person. Later that evening, I did write something. Not a reply. Just a note I saved in my phone. Closure doesn't always come with a conversation. Sometimes it's a decision. I didn't leave because I stopped loving her. I left because I finally started loving myself. That night, I packed my things. Not to go back, but to start over. Not because I needed revenge, or validation, or even forgiveness, but because I finally realized I was allowed to choose peace. And this time, I chose it. For me.